Secretary General of the United Nations, Director General of the United Nations Office at Geneva, High Commissioner for Human Rights, Vice President of the Federal Council and Head of the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, Excellencies, distinguished participants, I hereby declare open the 61st session of the Human Rights Council. It is my great honor to welcome you all. Today, your strong presence with over 120 high-level dignitaries from all regions sends a powerful and unmistakable message that this Council matters, that human rights matter, and that multilateral cooperation remains indispensable in navigating our shared challenges. Even amid pressures on the foundations of multilateralism, your presence reaffirms the determination enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, and that is to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human persons, and in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small. As we mark the 20th year since the establishment of the Human Rights Council, we reflect not only on 2 decades of meaningful contributions, from fostering dialogue and cooperation among states to advancing norms and standards, to strengthening accountability mechanisms, but also on the resiliency of this body. The Council has evolved, it has expanded its tools, it has responded to emerging crises, and it remains a central pillar of the international human rights architecture. From digital and technological risks to the impacts of climate change, conflict, inequality, and food insecurity, the Council has sought not only to deliberate, but to promote tangible improvements on the ground. This sustained engagement reflects the Council's enduring relevance and our shared commitment to universal respect for human rights, guided by universality, objectivity, non-selectivity, and the equal treatment of all rights, including the right to development. At the same time, we must acknowledge the ongoing financial constraints within the United Nations have affected our collective ability to fully implement our mandates. Yet, rather than retreat, these constraints compel us to act with greater resolve, to innovate, remain responsive, and reinforce the multiple layers of the global human rights architecture. Regional organizations and national human rights institutions, alongside civil society, are therefore the Council's indispensable partners. Let this session therefore serve as a renewed call to listen, to cooperate, and to act, and mark the Council's rise to the demands of the moment. Excellencies, distinguished participants, before handing over the floor to our distinguished guests for their opening statements, I now call on the Council to observe a moment of silence in memory of all victims of human rights violations all around the world. Excellencies, distinguished participants, we now have the honor of hearing statements from our distinguished guests, which will mark the opening of the 61st session of the Human Rights Council. I now have the honor to give the floor to the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. António Guterres. Your Excellency.
Distinguished President of the Human Rights Council, High Commissioner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Human rights are under a full-scale attack around the world. The rule of law is being outmuscled by the rule of force. And this assault is not coming from the shadows or by surprise. It is happening in plain sight and often led by those who hold the greatest power. Around the world, human rights are being pushed back deliberately, strategically, and sometimes proudly. The consequences are devastating, as witnessed in the Council, and as written in the lives of people who suffer twice, first from violence, oppression or exclusion, and then again from the world's indifference. When human rights fall, everything else trembles. Peace, development, social cohesion, trust, solidarity. This is precisely why the tools of the Human Rights Council, such as the special rapporteurs, special procedures, investigative mechanisms and universal periodic review are essential. And it is precisely why, as we mark the Council's 20th anniversary, we also recognise it's more important than ever to translate geopolitical engagement into a path towards strengthening human rights everywhere. Excellencies, tomorrow I should address the Security Council on the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, where more than 50,000 civilians have been killed. It is more than past time to end the bloodshed. I began this month speaking to the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People about blatant violations of human rights, human dignity and international law in the occupied Palestinian territory. The current trajectory is stark, clear and purposeful. The two-state solution is being stripped away in broad daylight. The international community cannot allow this to happen. And a few days ago, I was at the African Union Summit, where Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Sahel and other crises were front and centre. Excellencies, we are living in a world where mass suffering is excused away, where humans are used as bargaining chips, where international law is treated as a mere inconvenience. Conflicts are multiplying and the impunity has become a contagion. That is not due to a lack of knowledge, tools or institutions. It's the result of political choices. The crisis of respect for human rights does not stand alone. It mirrors and magnifies every other global fracture. Humanitarian needs are exploding while funding collapses. Inequalities are widening at staggering speed. Countries are drowning in debt and despair. Climate chaos is accelerating, and technology, especially artificial intelligence, is increasingly being used in ways that suppress rights, deepen inequality, and expose marginalized people to new forms of discrimination, both online and offline. Across every front, those who are already vulnerable are being pushed further to the margins. And human rights defenders are among the first to be silenced when they try to warn us. In this coordinated offensive, human rights are the first casualty. We see it in a tightening grip on civic space, journalists and activists jailed, NGOs shut down, women's rights rolled back, children's rights ignored, persons with disabilities excluded, democracies eroding, the right of peaceful assembly crushed, and I condemn once again the recent violent repression of protests in Iran. Migrants arrested and expelled with total disregard for their human rights and their humanity, refugees scapegoated, LGBTIQ+ communities vilified, minorities and indigenous peoples targeted, religious communities attacked, online spaces poisoned by disinformation and hate, resulting in real-world harm. Excellencies, human rights are not a slogan for good times. They are a duty at all times. And so we must stand up for them, and even when it is difficult, inconvenient or costly, especially then. That requires action on three urgent fronts. First, we must defend our shared foundations without compromise. The UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the Internationals of International Human Rights Law are not a menu. Leaders cannot pick the parts they like and ignore the rest. And human rights themselves are also not divisible. Economic rights, social rights, cultural rights, civil rights, and political rights, these are inherent, universal, inalienable, and interdependent. Excellences, deuxièmement, nous devons renforcer nos propres institutions. Nous ne pouvons pas faire comme si les dysfonctionnements de la gouvernance mondiale actuelle n'avaient aucun rapport avec la détérioration mondiale des droits humains. Notre volonté de réformer et de renforcer le Conseil de sécurité et l'architecture financière mondiale n'est pas une simple affaire d'intendance institutionnelle. Il s'agit d'une condition essentielle pour assurer la protection des droits humains et des libertés fondamentales. Quand le Conseil de sécurité est paralysé, quand les vétos servent de paravent politique, quand les rivalités géopolitiques l'emportent sur la protection des civils, le résultat est le même. L'impunité s'étend, les souffrances se multiplient et les droits humains sont piétinés. Nous avons besoin d'un Conseil de sécurité qui reflète le monde d'aujourd'hui, pas celui de 1945. Il en va de même pour l'architecture financière internationale afin de garantir aux pays en développement une participation réelle et une voix qui compte. Quand les pays les plus petits et les plus vulnérables sont pris au piège de la dette et privés d'investissements suffisants, leurs populations sont privées de leurs droits humains, y compris l'éducation, les soins de santé, la sécurité et la dignité. Notre initiative ONU 80 renforce également le lien entre droits humains, paix, développement durable et protection en contexte humanitaire, afin que ces domaines agissent de manière plus cohérente et se renforcent mutuellement. Elle propose également de créer un groupe des droits humains à l'échelle du système des Nations unies, afin d'ancrer plus profondément les droits humains dans l'ensemble des politiques et des activités de l'organisation. Et je remercie le commissaire d'avoir mené cet effort qui s'appuie sur l'appel à l'action en faveur des droits humains. Excellencies, third, we must unlock the power of human rights. After all, human rights are not only what we defend, they are what lifts the world to a better place. When rights are upheld, people live more freely, economies grow more fairly, communities trust more deeply, and peace and stability take hold because dignity takes root. Human rights are not an obstacle to progress, they are essential to progress. We have seen it time and time again all over the world. Where rights advance, conflict loses ground. Where justice strengthens, violent extremism weakens. Where equality expands, possibility explodes. Where freedom prevails, societies flourish. And so we must change course and let human dignity set the direction. By renewing our commitment to respect for the rule of law at every level. by supporting the pivotal work of the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, by delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals, by accelerating climate action, by upholding what makes us human. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in my first address to this Council as Secretary-General, I spoke of a deep personal commitment to human rights. Growing under the Salazar dictatorship taught me that the denial of human rights corrodes every aspect of society. Working for the United Nations has shown me how respect for human rights brings out the best in humanity. And now, in my 10th year at the helm of the UN, the power of human rights has never been more clear. Human rights are not west or east, north or south. They are not a luxury. They are not negotiable. They are the foundation of a more peaceful and secure world. And states are bound by their obligations under the Charter and international law. We still have much work ahead together. But since this is my final address to the opening of your session, I leave you with this appeal. Do not let the erosion of human rights become the accepted price of political expediency or geopolitical competition. Do not let power write a new rule book in which the vulnerable have no rights and the powerful have no limits. Let this Human Rights Council be the voice and shield for all those in need. Let this be the place that helps end the broad and brutal assault on human rights. Because a world that protects human rights protects itself, and I thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General. I now have the pleasure to give the floor to the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Volker Türk. You have the floor.
Mr. President of the Human Rights Council, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies. A fierce competition for power, control and resources is playing out on the world stage at a rate and intensity unseen for the past 80 years. People are feeling unmoored, anxious and insecure. The gears of global power are shifting and the consequences are not clear. Some are signaling the end of the world order as we know it. But today I want to talk about another world order. One that is organized from the ground up and that is unshakable. A foundational system of how people relate to each other based on our inherent worth, our hopes and our common values. I'm referring to the people's pursuit of dignity, equality and justice. This quest is innate to what makes us human, to be free, to be heard and to have our basic needs met. And it is a strong counterbalance to the top-down autocratic trends that we see today. The use of force to resolve disputes between and within countries is becoming normalized. Inflammatory threats against sovereign nations are thrown about with no regard to the fire they could ignite. The laws of war are being brutally violated. Mass civilian suffering from Sudan to Gaza to Ukraine to Myanmar is unfolding before our eyes. In Sudan, there needs to be accountability for all violations by all parties, notably the war crimes and possible crimes against humanity committed by the rapid support forces in Al-Fashir. Such atrocities must not be repeated in Kordofan or elsewhere, and all those with influence need to act urgently to put an end to this senseless war. The situation in Gaza remains catastrophic. Palestinians are still dying from Israeli fire, cold, hunger and treatable disease. The aid allowed in is not enough to meet the massive needs. There are concerns over ethnic cleansing in both Gaza and the West Bank, while Israel is accelerating efforts to consolidate unlawful annexation. Any sustainable solution must be based on two states living side by side in equal dignity and rights in line with UN resolutions and international law. Tomorrow marks 4 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. 4 interminable and agonizing years. Civilian casualties have soared, and Russia's systematic attacks on Ukraine's energy and water infrastructure could amount to international crimes. The fighting needs to end, and I urge a focus on human rights and justice in any ceasefire or peace agreement. In Myanmar, 5 years after the military coup, the awful conflict is claiming even more civilian lives, and the humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate. The recent elections, staged by the military, have only deepened people's despair. Across most violent conflicts today, journalists, health and aid workers are targeted in blatant violation of international law. These actions must not be allowed to harden into the new normal. States need to be persistent objectors to violations of the law by pursuing accountability and by clearly denouncing these egregious crimes with consistency and without exception. Meanwhile, violence and tensions are resurging in some countries, including South Sudan and Ethiopia. And authorities in Iran have violently repressed mass protests with lethal force, killing thousands. I will provide more detail on these and other country situations in my global update later this week. Excellencies, developments around the world point to a deeply worrying trend. Domination and supremacy are making a comeback. If we listen to the rhetoric of some leaders, what lurks behind it is a belief that they are above the law and above the UN Charter. They claim exceptional status, exceptional danger, or exceptional moral judgment to pursue their own agenda at any cost. And why wouldn't they try when they are unlikely to face consequences? They build and sustain systems that perpetuate inequalities within and between countries. Some weaponize their economic leverage. They spread disinformation to distract, silence, and marginalize. A tight clique of tech tycoons controls an outside proportion of global information flows, distorting public debate, markets, and even governance systems. Corporate and state interests ravage our environment, robbing the riches of the earth for their own gain. But at the same time, people are not watching all this from the sidelines. They are activating their power from the ground up. Women and young people especially are leading these movements. They are claiming their rights to basic living conditions, to fair pay, to bodily autonomy, to self-determination, to be heard, to vote freely, and many other rights. From Nepal to Madagascar, from Serbia to Peru and beyond, people are demanding equality and denouncing corruption. Neighbors and communities standing up for each other, sometimes even risking their lives. People are protesting war and injustice in places far from home, expressing solidarity and pressuring their governments to act. They see human rights as a practical force for good, and they are right. Human rights are anathema to supremacy. They are a direct challenge to those who seek and cling on to power. That is what makes human rights radical, and that is what gives them force. They are universal, timeless, and indestructible. Excellences, les droits humains ne sont pas apparus comme par magie avec la Déclaration universelle du 10 décembre 1948. Le peuple aspirait à la liberté, à l'égalité, bien avant que ces principes ne soient codifiés dans des accords nationaux et internationaux. À la fin du XIXe siècle, les esclaves de l'actuel Haïti se sont soulevés contre la domination coloniale au nom de l'égalité raciale. Les révolutions américaines et françaises ont remis en cause l'autorité incontrôlée. Le mouvement abolitionniste était un rejet de la traite transatlantique des esclaves, le système d'asservissement le plus brutal qui soit. Au début des années 1900, les femmes se sont unies pour revendiquer leur droit de vote. La lutte pour l'égalité de genre se poursuit. Après les 2 guerres mondiales sanglantes et la Shoah, la Charte des Nations Unies a réaffirmé la foi dans les droits humains fondamentaux, ainsi que dans la dignité et la valeur de l'être humain. Le XXe siècle a ensuite été marqué par une période de décolonisation qui a réaffirmé le droit à l'autodétermination. Les peuples se sont mobilisés pour mettre fin à la ségrégation raciale, pour réclamer les droits des travailleurs et des travailleuses et pour protéger les droits des personnes LGBT. Des mères ont défilé ensemble pour réclamer justice pour leurs enfants disparus de l'Argentine, Syrie au Sri Lanka. Et les jeunes ont fait entendre leur voix pour la justice climatique. Excellencies, human rights are the thread that runs through all these movements. And we do not take their achievements for granted. Tyranny will seize any chance and exploit any opening. We must keep standing up for human rights in solidarity with each other. And when we come together, we wield more power than any autocrat or tech billionaire. The struggle for human rights can never be derailed by the whims of a handful of leaders with reactionary, supremacist agendas. While some states are weakening the multilateral system, we need bolder and more joined-up responses. First, this means calling out violations of international law regardless of the perpetrators. Too often, denouncing violations by one party is labelled as siding with the enemy. In reality, it is upholding the universality and the pursuit of justice for all. The alternative, selective, fragmented responses weakens international law and hurts us all. The entire human rights ecosystem is designed to promote universality and ensure consistency. This includes the tools that are mandated by this Council, and I condemn all attacks against them. Second, we need stronger commitment to accountability. This includes strengthening the International Criminal Court and encouraging national prosecutions under the principle of universal jurisdiction. We need to increase the cost of breaking international law. Third, let's forge coalitions to champion what unites us and uphold equality, dignity and justice for all. We must protect the diversity of the human family and demonstrate what we gain by standing together. In the coming weeks, we will set in motion a global alliance for human rights to capture the energy and commitment that is palpable everywhere. It will be cross-regional, multi-stakeholder, involving states, businesses, cities, philanthropists, scientists, artists, philosophers, young people, and civil society. It will confront top-down domination with grassroots solidarity and support. It will represent the quiet majority who want a different world. Human rights are not a political currency. They are not up for grabs. Our future depends on our joint commitment to defend every person's rights, every time, everywhere. Thank you.
I thank the High Commissioner for Human Rights. We will now listen to the address by Her Excellency, Ms. Annalena Baerbock, President of the United Nations General Assembly, followed by His Excellency, Mr. Ignacio Cassis, Vice President of the Federal Council and Head of the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs of the Swiss Confederation in his capacity as representative of the host states. Following these statements, we will officially commence the high-level segment of this session. Now I have the honor to give the floor to the President of the 80th session of the General Assembly, Her Excellency Ms. Annalena Baerbock.
Distinguished President of the Human Rights Council, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. High Commissioner for Human Rights, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, apologies. New York is still not so used to snow, so I'm very happy that I made it, especially in these very challenging times. And as you have heard already, the importance of human rights, and as we are all agreeing, at least in principles, otherwise we would not speak at the Human Rights Council about the importance in the 20th year of this Human Rights Council to protect human rights, I would like to start a bit differently, a bit self-reflectively to our own work here. Especially given the latest headlines of the worst structural human rights violation, some call it gender apartheid system, against Afghan women and girls. Because, frankly speaking, I cannot stop thinking about the debates we had also here in our UN system, also here in Geneva, in New York, in different capitals, about how we should deal with the humanitarian aid delivery and the principles of humanitarian aid and support, while women were not allowed to work anymore, also not for the UN anymore, and girls could not go to school anymore. And I think you also remember very well, because these are hard debates and hard decisions, that there was also some of the argumentation saying, well, this is Kandahar, Kabul might be different, there might be more moderate, which could prevail, and in some speaking points of capitals and maybe also of UN officials, the before most important point of protecting human rights and women's rights was in some of these debates a bit lowered. So therefore I think this is also a moment where we should remember once and for all and again that appeasement in the light of most severe human rights violations never prevails, and that we should not learn the hard lesson again, that women's rights are indeed the benchmark for the state of a society, the state of the world. Because if women, meaning half of the world population, 4 billion people, are not safe, no one will be safe. So as we are seeing not only a dramatic backlash in women, but also human rights and other rules and standards which were believed to be set in stone and are now openly questioned, dismissed or violated, my speech today, I would say similar as a SG speech, is a call to action to all of us, to all of you. Because history teaches us that large systems rarely collapse in one dramatic moment. They erode slowly, rule by rule, commitment by commitment, with those who should defend them rather staying silent, until one day what seemed permanent simply vanishes. So being a member of this Human Rights Council, a member state, an ambassador, a minister, an UN official in these times is not a spectator sport. We are not bystanders who have the luxury of standing on the sidelines while injustice unfolds. Silence is a choice, inaction is a choice, and it has consequences. Yet, the good news is action is a choice as well, and it lies in our own hands. And the human rights system, the Universal Declaration, the principles as enshrined in the Charter need this action of every one of us now. Action by governments and diplomats, officials and parliamentarians. It needs all of us. It needs you. Your support, your leadership, your principled stance, your cross-regional cooperation to protect and defend and champion all the three principles of the Charter: peace and security, development and human rights. As we all know, they are interconnected, that they benefit us all individually and collectively. It needs you as ambassadors to stand up when the next attack on human rights comes by single amendments to resolutions for which we thought they were written in stone, and suddenly deleting some humans, women or LGBTIQ+ persons, people with disabilities, refugees, migrants. You don't know who will be next. As a pact for the future states, these three pillars are equally important, interlinked and mutually reinforced. We cannot have one without the others. It means always endeavoring to bridge divides and find compromise, insofar as compromise doesn't become appeasement. When compromise shifts from mutual accommodation to the slow erosion or deliberate dismantling of the very foundations of this institution, then it's no longer compromise, it's compromising. Therefore, it needs you, distinguished ministers, as well, to uphold human rights, not only here in the Council, when we are meeting all together, but in your national debates, when in highly populistic times, with social media pressure in seconds, some challenge suddenly the 1951 Refugee Convention again, or start lowering the age of marriage, meaning de facto allowing girls' marriage. Or when we have the spread of anti-Semitic, racist or Islamophobic propaganda, trying to rewrite our criminal law, our civil law. It needs a clear commitment from every member state that UN premises belong to the United Nations, including UNRWA, and that their schools are currently essential for guaranteeing Palestinian children their right to education. It needs a clear commitment from every member state that the abduction of Ukrainian children is a war crime. It needs a clear commitment of every member state that everywhere around the world, people have the right to demonstrate peacefully and freely, also in Iran. It needs all of us to neither give in nor give up. If we are seeing humanitarian catastrophes, starvation, mass killings and mass rape in Sudan year after year, seeing the devastating situation of the Rohingya, yet continuing to try even harder for delivery of humanitarian assistance, for people to return, for people to be safe. It needs our common understanding that our human rights work is not static, yet must evolve as new threats to human dignity emerge. This includes the rapidly evolving fields of technology and artificial intelligence. Used responsibly, it can expand knowledge, improve healthcare, strengthen disaster response and support climate-resilient agriculture. But without safeguard, the same technologies can entrenching biases, amplifying harm, even teaching our own children how to commit suicide, currently in some countries without any consequence. Therefore, responsible global governance of technology is essential, and the AI Summit just the other day, as well as the UN's independent international scientific panel on AI, approved by the General Assembly just 11 days ago, are great proof that even and especially in these challenging times, we are indeed better together if we take the step forward. And in this regard, I would really like to thank our dear Secretary General, because he was the one pushing forward the artificial intelligence framework, the debate that this is also responsibility for our United Nations. Because it's not true that we have to lower our ambitions for caring around the world. The United Nations means especially facing new chances, but also challenges. And for sure, in these times, when our system is heavily under pressure, and 80 years is quite some time, we have to reform. So it needs all of you, all of us in Geneva, as well as in New York and the other places around the world, together to engage jointly in our UN80 reform process. And we have to be true to ourselves again. There is an overlap between the Human Rights Council and the Third Committee. There are duplication across agencies. And this is the reason why we are doing this reform, to make this institution stronger and better, more efficient, and not weakening it. Finally, for an institution built on human rights, representing all of the people, one question looms large. How is it that within 80 years, a woman has never served as Secretary General, even though half of the 8 billion people we are supposed to serve are women and girls? So again, silence is a choice, but action as well. After member states called in consensus to strongly encourage women nomination, do not suddenly, as a decision about it comes closer, let them ask you again to explain, so why should we have a woman, and what is about the competence, the question we never hear about when we talk about male applications. On the contrary, make them explain why not. After 80 years, half of the society, half of the world has also the right to be represented. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, leadership matters. We are just around the corner of Italy, obviously, where the Olympics are just closing and the Paralympics are starting. And their athletes from all around the world in all their diversity showed us again what we can achieve when we come together, despite our differences, or especially because of our diversity, to compete fiercely yet fairly on the same playing field, governed by the same rules, always in mutual respect, that a life is a life, that a human being is a human being. Now it's up to us, to you, to all of us, to stand up in this spirit. It needs your support, your leadership, your principled stand, your cross-regional cooperation to defend these principles, our common global human rights. Here, in Geneva, in New York, in your capital, your government, now, every day. I thank you.
I thank the President of the General Assembly. I now have the honor of inviting His Excellency Mr. Ignacio Cassis, Head of the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, to make a statement on behalf of the host country. You have the floor, Excellency.
Merci, Monsieur le Président du Conseil des droits de l'homme, Madame la Présidente de l'Assemblée générale, Monsieur le Secrétaire général, Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire des droits de l'homme, Excellences, chers collègues ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs, j'ai le plaisir de vous accueillir à Genève pour la 61e session du Conseil des droits de l'homme. Depuis 20 ans, nous nous réunissons dans cette salle, pas exactement cette même salle, pour une même tâche, protéger la dignité humaine dans un monde qui change plus vite que nos institutions. Aujourd'hui, les crises, on l'a déjà entendu, se multiplient. La confiance s'érode entre États, entre sociétés, parfois même au sein des institutions. Les ressources se raréfient alors que les attentes et les besoins paraissent illimités. Les avancées technologiques ouvrent des perspectives inédites, mais créent aussi de nouveaux risques pour les libertés. Dans ce contexte, Les droits de l'homme ne sont pas un luxe. Ils sont une nécessité, une boussole. Mais pour rester crédibles, nous devons faire preuve de clarté et de discipline. Nous ne pouvons pas tout faire. Nous devons concentrer nos efforts là où les droits sont le plus menacés et surtout viser un impact réel. C'est l'approche que la Suisse a retenue dans ses nouvelles lignes directrices. Se recentrer sur l'essentiel, la protection de l'individu et de ses libertés fondamentales, tout en réaffirmant l'universalité et l'indivisibilité des droits. 20 ans après sa création, ce Conseil doit plus que jamais être un lieu de véritable dialogue, au-delà des simples déclarations, capable d'agir face aux crises. Des progrès existent, mais ils restent fragiles et inégalement partagés. Excellences, dans un monde fragmenté, il est essentiel de préserver des lieux où le dialogue reste possible, même et surtout lorsque les positions divergent profondément. Genève est l'un de ces lieux. L'esprit de Genève, fait de respect, d'écoute, de pragmatisme, doit continuer à guider nos travaux. Je vous remercie.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Cassis for the statement on behalf of the host country. Excellencies, distinguished participants, before we proceed with the list of speakers for the high-level segment of the 61st session, let me remind you that this segment is scheduled to conclude on Wednesday, the 25th of February, and will be immediately followed by the general segment. Before giving the floor to the first speaker on the list, allow me to recall that the list of speakers for the high-level segment is available and regularly updated on the Council's extranet. Out of respect for the high dignitaries, I invite delegations to be present in the room at least 10 minutes before the start of each meeting and to maintain silence so as not to disrupt the statements. Given the large numbers of dignitaries who will address the Council, I kindly request delegations to inform the Secretariat as soon as possible of any potential delay. As in the past years, and in conformity with the Council's rules and practices, there is no possibility to interrupt a dignitary statement by way of a point of order. All requests to exercise a right of reply relating to statements delivered during the high-level segment will be accommodated after the conclusion of the general statement. I wish to remind delegations that the speaking time is 7 minutes for heads of state and heads of government and 5 minutes for all other participants in the high-level segment. I kindly ask all delegations to respect the speaking time. By adhering to your allocated time, you help other delegations to deliver their statements as scheduled. Concerning pre-recorded video statements, I wish to underscore that any videos not received in a timely manner will be rescheduled based on availability. I would also like to remind delegations to upload an electronic version of their statements through online speaker registration system so that they may be posted on the Council's extranet. It is imperative that statements be uploaded in Word format in order to enhance the Council's accessibility for persons with disabilities. Please note that statements uploaded in a non-accessible format will not be posted on the extranet. Excellencies, distinguished participants, the effective conduct of the Council sessions as well as the fulfillment of its mandate rests upon a constructive, safe, and respectful environment. It is therefore imperative that delegates, representatives of civil society, members of the Secretariat and the Council's mandate holders are able to carry out their responsibilities free from personal attack, intimidation, or undue pressure. In this regard, I wish to express my deep concern and regret at the personal attacks and sanctions directed against certain mandate holders of the Council. Such practices are incompatible with the spirit of cooperation and dialogue and must underpin our work. Mandate holders are a cornerstone of the Council's work for the promotion and protection of all human rights worldwide. Such attacks highlight the significant challenges that these experts may face, even as they discharge their mandate with professionalism and dedication, often in particularly sensitive and complex contexts. I therefore call upon all member states to cooperate fully with them and to refrain from any acts of intimidation, personal attacks, and unlawful unilateral sanctions that may hinder the independent and effective discharge of their mandates. In my capacity as President of the Council, I wish to reaffirm my full and unequivocal support for the mandate holders and to encourage states and all relevant stakeholders to uphold and safeguard their integrity. While recognizing that mandate holders, like all actors within the human rights system, are not beyond scrutiny and constructive dialogue, even criticism, their independence and protection remain essential to the effectiveness, credibility, and legitimacy of the Council's collective action. Finally, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the government of Italy for its generous support in funding the live broadcasting of the Council's high-level segment. I also wish to thank all the donors contributing to the Voluntary Technical Assistance Trust Fund for supporting the participation of least developed countries and small island developing states. Excellencies, distinguished participants, let us now proceed with the list of speakers for the high-level segment. And I have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Jose Ramos Horta, President of Timor-Leste. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Excelentíssimo Senhor Presidente, Embaixador Siddhartha Reza, Senhor Alto Comissário para Direitos Humanos, estimados embaixadores, estimados defensores dos direitos humanos e estimado secretário-geral, não contava com a sua presença aqui. I will be speaking in Portuguese, but translation done in several languages, this is an abbreviated speech to keep with 7 minutes given to me, and apologize to the interpreters because I'll be jumping page to page. It might confuse you. So I start in Português. Vivemos numa era de extrema polarização dentro dos países, entre vizinhos e além fronteiras. Conflitos armados persistem em todo o mundo, desde a baixa intensidade até guerras abertas nunca vistas há décadas, com graves violações das leis da guerra. O espaço cívico encolheu. As redes sociais amplificam a desinformação, alimentam divisões, exacerbam a indignação face à pobreza extrema e ao sentimento de discriminação e exclusão. Além disso, assistimos à forma como a Mãe Natureza reage a 100 anos de devastação das florestas, mares, rios, lagos, bem como o impacto do consumo excessivo que conduz ao esgotamento crítico dos estoques de peixe em todo o mundo. As alterações climáticas, a instabilidade política, aumento da dívida, muitas vezes acumulada ao longo de décadas com taxas de juros insustentáveis. E as desigualdades estruturais corroem os direitos dos povos em todas as regiões. O peso da dívida pública impede investimentos essenciais na educação, saúde, infraestruturas e proteção social, perpetuando ciclos de vulnerabilidade. Reitero apelos anteriores aos credores comerciais e estatais para que demonstrem sabedoria e compaixão, reescalonando ou, quando necessário, simplesmente perdoando a dívida, num espírito de responsabilidade partilhada. A ortodoxia econômica de medidas draconianas de austeridade aplicadas pelo Banco Central Europeu a países europeus altamente endividados durante a crise financeira de 2008-2009 serviu sobretudo para resgatar os responsáveis pela crise e penalizou os pobres e a classe média. Devemos explorar novas soluções para a dívida que estimulem o crescimento econômico, criem empregos, permitindo aos países mais desfavorecidos libertar recursos para investir nas suas populações. Os direitos humanos não existem no vazio. Num contexto internacional marcado por rivalidades geopolíticas e pela tentação dos ricos e poderosos de impor a sua vontade aos mais vulneráveis, a própria base da codificação dos direitos humanos encontra-se em erosão. Os mecanismos dos direitos humanos não são meros instrumentos para proteger os vulneráveis, são o alicerce de sociedades estáveis, humanas e equitativas. Não foram consagrados como declarações simbólicas, mas como princípios estruturantes de uma governação responsável. São uma escolha ética e prática. O poder sem limites conduz à corrupção, à violência, à injustiça. Os direitos humanos funcionam como salvaguarda contra estes riscos, permitindo que as pessoas prosperem, inovem e investam num ambiente de previsibilidade e confiança. Para nós, em Timor-Leste, os direitos humanos não são um princípio abstrato, nem um compromisso retórico. Estão profundamente enraizados no nosso caráter. Foi a nossa profunda convicção na dignidade humana que nos permitiu, durante a luta pela independência, reconhecer a humanidade dos nossos adversários, compreendendo que também eram vítimas de um sistema que lhes negava direitos. Nunca demonizamos o outro como povo ou as suas crenças. Uma vez alcançada a independência, estivemos preparados para estender a mão de reconciliação aos inimigos. Uso esta palavra inimigos, entre aspas, porque não gosto dela. A outra parte demonstrou elevado sentido de sabedoria e estadismo e aceitou a nossa mão estendida. Rejeitamos pressões para a criação de tribunais internacionais. Em vez de retribuição, optamos por curar as feridas da alma, honrando as vítimas. A nossa Constituição consagra um amplo conjunto de direitos cívicos e políticos, econômicos, sociais e culturais. Em quase 25 anos de independência, nunca proibimos qualquer órgão de comunicação social, repórter ou colunista. A plena realização dos direitos humanos não é uma tarefa fácil. Estes direitos foram codificados porque não são necessários, mesmo quando geram debate, exigem reformas e impõem limites ao poder. Reforçamos o quadro institucional para prevenir a violência baseada no género, promover a participação política das mulheres e garantir acesso equitativo à educação, saúde e emprego. Investimos na educação como base do desenvolvimento humano e da construção da paz, consciente de que o futuro de Timor-Leste depende de uma juventude educada e saudável, plenamente integrada na vida social e econômica do país. A educação e o acesso à saúde nas instituições públicas são totalmente gratuitos. Timor-Leste mantém um firme compromisso com a promoção da paz, reconciliação e justiça transicional. A nossa experiência demonstra que a verdade, a memória e a reconciliação são essenciais para a construção de sociedades inclusivas. No quadro do grupo G7 de Estados frágeis, partilhamos ligações aprendidas com outros povos que enfrentam situações semelhantes. Condenamos todas as violações dos direitos humanos e do direito internacional humanitário, onde quer que ocorram, e apelamos à proteção de civis, responsabilização dos perpetradores e acesso humanitário seguro e sem entraves. A guerra civil em grande escala em Myanmar continua a ser motivo de preocupação para os líderes da ASEAN. Timor-Leste subscreve o consenso de 5 pontos adotado pelos chefes de Estado da ASEAN. Relativamente à Ucrânia, expressamos profunda preocupação com as violações contínuas do direito humanitário e juntamos-nos aos apelos para um cessar-fogo imediato e pelo respeito da soberania e integridade territorial do país. Parece que a Rússia e a Ucrânia terão de comprometer-se, ceder, sem que haja vencedores ou vencidos isolados. Os vencedores seriam os povos da Rússia e da Ucrânia, bem como os povos da Europa, cujas vidas foram severamente impactadas por esta guerra. Reafirmamos o nosso apoio ao direito do povo palestiniano à autodeterminação e apelamos à proteção especial de mulheres e crianças. Com a mesma convicção, condenamos todas as formas de antissemitismo e retiramos, sem reservas, o nosso apoio ao direito de Israel à segurança dentro de fronteiras internacionalmente reconhecidas. Não devemos rejeitar demasiadamente rápido o plano de paz para Gaza, proposto pelo presidente Donald Trump. Pelo menos vamos aguardar e ver. Entretanto, apelamos ao primeiro-ministro Benjamin Netanyahu que ordena às forças de defesa que protejam as mulheres e as crianças e parem a morte de civis. Palestinianos e israelitas devem refletir sobre os seus erros de cálculo e as oportunidades perdidas, tendo em vista uma solução viável de 2 Estados. Elogiamos o presidente dos Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, a liderança dos países árabes da linha da frente, Emirados Árabes Unidos, Catar, Arábia Saudita, o Egito, Jordânia e Omã, pelas suas consistentes contribuições humanitárias e pelos seus incansáveis esforços de mediação para pôr termo a estas catástrofes, crises humanitárias e assegurar uma paz duradoura para os povos da Ucrânia e da Rússia, bem como para os povos da Palestina e de Israel. Outras crises humanitárias prolongadas e graves permanecem relegadas ao segundo plano, exigindo a nossa renovada atenção, como no Sahel, Sudão do Sul, República Democrática do Congo e Iêmen, onde populações inteiras enfrentam fome generalizada. Apelo ao presidente dos Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, em coerência com os melhores valores humanitários e tradições do povo americano. Ponha fim ao bloqueio a Cuba e com o governo cubano iniciem o processo de diálogo com vista a pôr termo a 70 anos de inimizade e confrontação e assegurem um caminho pacífico para reformas políticas e econômicas. O sistema internacional pode ser imperfeito, mas continua a ser o melhor quadro disponível para proteger os pequenos e os mais vulneráveis. Timor-Leste, como membro ativo do grupo de países G7+, apoia e acolhe o Secretariado Executivo em Dili demonstrando o potencial do país com a experiência comum de construção da paz para contribuírem de forma tangível para a proteção e promoção dos direitos humanos a nível global. Como membro da ASEAN, da Comunidade dos Países da Língua Portuguesa, CPLP, parceiro empenhado dos países LDCs e dos SCIDs, Estados Insulares em Desenvolvimento, reafirmamos o nosso compromisso com os direitos humanos. Devemos também reconhecer que o debate sobre os direitos humanos se estende para além destas salas. Se estamos verdadeiramente comprometidos com a defesa dos direitos humanos, precisamos encontrar formas inovadoras de comunicar com os nossos povos. Excelências, mais do que nunca, este Conselho é necessário. Estejamos à altura das responsabilidades que nos foram confiadas, respondendo com coragem, solidariedade e humanidade às legítimas expectativas dos povos do mundo. O desafio é grande, devemos estar à altura da tarefa. May God, the Almighty, bless us all.
So we are taking a brief pause to allow our distinguished guests to take their leave. I respectfully request delegations to remain in their seats as we will immediately resume our work. Thank you. We will now return to our list of speakers. I have the honor to give the floor now to Her Excellency Ms. Hilda Hein, President of Marshall Islands, who will deliver a message by video.
Mr. President, Excellencies, Yahweh Gomalik, greetings from the Marshall Islands. As a member of the Human Rights Council, the Republic of the Marshall Islands holds to the belief that the spirit of multilateralism will continue to move states towards meaningful dialogue, empathy, greater solidarity, cooperation, and action to advance the realization of human rights for all. We firmly believe that international cooperation and collective action lead to our shared prosperity. The Marshall Islands have experienced the consequences of multilateralism failing. Our atolls and islands were used to test nuclear weapons while administered by the United States of America under a United Nations trusteeship. This was a monumental failure in multilateralism with lasting human rights consequences for the Marshallese people. Between 1946 and 1958, the Marshall Islands was subjected to 67 known nuclear weapons tests. The Marshallese people were exposed to nuclear fallout as well as radiation-contaminated environments and used as human test subjects in a top-secret scientific experiment called Project 4.1 to study the effects of such exposure. Our humanity was disregarded, and the scientists that carried out the study did so without our consent. They went as far as to justify this with racism, comparing us to mice and calling us uncivilized. To this day, the Marshallese people have not received an apology. There has been no meaningful reconciliation as we continue to seek justice. Reconciliation may not be easy, but it is the only way forward. It requires honesty and bold leadership to respond to our people's calls for justice and redress. After almost 80 years, we remain hopeful for meaningful reconciliation with the United Nations and the United States of America. Mr. President, with respect to climate change, multilateralism continues to fail when high-emitting states deny the science and the urgent need for a rapid transition from fossil fuel-based economies. This denial has dire consequences on the Marshallese people as rising sea levels erode our shores, infiltrate our freshwater sources, and threaten the human rights of our people and our cultural way of life. As a low-lying coral atoll nation with the average elevation of about 2 meters above sea level, we are among the most vulnerable to climate change-induced sea level rise. It is concerning that those most responsible who can make the greatest difference in the fight against climate change choose to deny our reality and the urgent need to rapidly transition. Despite these challenges, the Republic of the Marshall Islands firmly believes in the spirit of multilateralism, what it represents, and its potential. We continue to believe that constructive dialogue will move states towards common ground and lead to pragmatic, durable solutions. The Human Rights Council represents the success that can be achieved if states engage in this manner, and our experience as a member reaffirms this understanding. While this council does not always agree, we have found consensus on matters that resonate deeply with the Marshallese people. This council adopted by consensus the resolution that continues the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the context of climate change, as well as the resolution that continues the OHCHR mandate to provide technical assistance to address the human rights implications of our nuclear legacy. In doing so, the Council serves as a beacon of hope for the Marshallese people. The impact of this Council's work strengthens our belief in the spirit of multilateralism. With renewed resolve, we recommit to our efforts to share our lived experiences with the human rights consequences of climate change and nuclear weapons. We will continue to insist on states fulfilling their obligations where climate change is concerned, in accordance with the unanimous advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on states' obligations in respect of climate change. Furthermore, in October, we will seek to extend the mandate for OHCHR technical assistance to address the human rights implications of our nuclear legacy. We trust that we can continue to count Council's support. Mr. President, the Republic of the Marshall Islands will commemorate Nuclear Victims Remembrance Day on March 1st, the 72nd anniversary of the Castle Bravo test, which caused catastrophic human rights and humanitarian consequences for the Marshallese people. This year's commemoration is also significant as we approach the 80th anniversary of the start of the nuclear weapon test in the Marshall Islands on July 1st, 1946, which continued until 1958. The Republic of the Marshall Islands will hold a commemoration event in Geneva, and we invite delegation and civil society to join us on this occasion. On this important anniversary, we must remember the victims of nuclear weapons and answer their calls for justice. Justice demands the abolition of nuclear weapons in recognition of the legacy of harms caused by their testing and use, as well as their continued existence. Mr. President, the Republic of the Marshall Islands is proud to serve as a member of this Council. We embrace this responsibility and will continue to uphold the principles that we hold dear as a nation and as a people. We recognize that we can offer this Council unique perspectives and understandings of human rights, and likewise, we look forward to the enriching contributions from states and civil society alike. Together, we can strengthen and promote international human rights governance through meaningful dialogue, empathy, greater solidarity, cooperation, and action. The Human Rights Council must strive to be a beacon of hope for humanity and multilateralism, and the Marshall Islands will share its light for that cause. Komoltada, and I thank you.
I thank the President of Marshall Islands. Next, I have the honor to give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Sushila Karki, Prime Minister of Nepal, who will deliver a video message.
Mr. President, Mr. High Commissioner, Excellencies, at the outset, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. President, on your election as a President of Human Rights Council for 2026. Nepal assures its full support in discharging your mandate. We are meeting at a critical time. The world is facing several crises, some conventional and some emerging. Climate change, increasing conflict, and severe disaster are to name a few. And most importantly, these crises are not stand-alone. They are intertwined and complex. Multilateralism itself is being tested, but our commitment to human rights is still strong and unflinching. We must uphold the universality of human rights despite several odds and uncertainties. Mr. President, Nepal is committed to protect and promote human rights. Our journey to democracy and freedom is a testimony to our consistent effort to ensure human rights. We have taken several measures, policy, legal, and institutional, to reflect our commitment in practice. Now our priority is to institutionalize human rights and make it a culture. A culture that respects each other and ensures human dignity and equality. A culture that makes state responsible for protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms. And a culture that fosters decent living without compromising basic needs and services. Mr. President, I am happy to share with you all that Nepal has achieved remarkable progress in the field of human rights. Human rights and fundamental freedoms are the very foundation of our Constitution. It guarantees equality and social justice. It protects the rights of women, children, persons with disabilities, indigenous people, Madhesi, Tharu, Muslim, Dalit, marginalized communities, as well as sexual and gender minorities. It upholds right to education, health, employment, food, and clean environment, among others. Nepal has enacted several laws and policies to translate these rights into realities. We are party to 24 human rights instruments, including 7 core human rights conventions and 11 ILO conventions. Mr. President, Nepal is firmly committed to the purpose and principles of Charter of United Nations. Peace is an inherent characteristic of Nepali society. We successfully ended a decade-long armed conflict through home-grown and nationally led peace process. Transitional justice is an integral part of this process. We are committed to concluding the transitional justice process in a credible, inclusive, and victim-centric manner. As we move towards the conclusion of last mile works of transitional justice, the government has reconstituted the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Commission of Investigation on Enforced Disappeared Persons last year. In addition, Nepal has been consistently contributing to international peace and security. Today, Nepal is #1 troops contributing country in different UN peacekeeping missions. Through these missions, Nepali women and men have defended peace, protected civilians, and upheld human rights.